You're welcome to our news desk. Filter News ATV today's analysis centers on the breaking news from the Sahara Reporters of November 10th, 2025. Today is November 11th, 2025, and the breaking news is that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu heads back to Supreme Court to challenge erroneous ruling of 2022. Then we have to ask erroneous ruling and who were the judges that took the decision. According to the statement, the 5-member panel led by Justice Garba Lawal, with Justice Emmanuel Agim, Kudrat Kekere Ekum, the present-day Chief Justice of the Federation, Tijani Abubakar, and Ibrahim Musa Solawa, all were the judges that took the decision that knowingly, as it is stated, that knowingly relied on a repealed law to remand Mazi Nnamdi Kanu for trial. That is the real allegation. As you can see in the breaking news on the screen, it says Nnamdi Kanu heads back to Supreme Court to challenge 2023 erroneous ruling. The 2023 erroneous ruling is why he went back to the court. At the center of the controversy is the Terrorism Prevention Act. Terrorism Prevention Act, Amendment Act 2013, which was repealed and replaced by the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022 on 12th May 2022, more than a year before the Apex Court's judgment. The Supreme Court knew the law had died, acknowledged that a repealed statute cannot sustain a criminal charge, yet proceeded to resurrect a dead law to send back to the Federal High Court, Njoko alleged. This is a big allegation and big problem if it is discovered to be true. He described the ruling as not an accident, nor an intellectual slip, but a deliberate judicial ambush that misrepresented a dead law as alive. A dead law as alive. We will look indeed into the first ruling of Court of Appeal that brought them back to the Supreme Court. We will look at what
you have to state clearly where the offense was committed. And in the case of Nnamdi Kanu, he was simply abducted by the security forces and brought back to Nigeria. And I think the appeal court is saying there are protocols, there are established conventions, established order that Nigeria should follow if you want to arrest somebody that you believe has not showed up for his trial, and you have to really say from where have you arrested him from? How did you arrest him? How did you bring him back? This is very important. These are very important questions.
Yeah, you have heard from him the very important questions. But this law lies between the judiciary and the legislators, legislative arm of government and the judiciary. This is where the law that brokered this very trial lies now. As you can see, you see Mazi Nnamdi Kanu in the court raising the constitution up, asking the question that he is being tried using the repealed law, which is absolutely wrong, and why he refused to enter into the trial. He refused to make a defense and refused to act on that very trial they want to push him to. So the issue of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is entirely controversial and seems to be something different. We will go into that and see what is trending on this very issue. Now, we have had the opportunity to see where the ruling, how people were jubilating, and let us see how the issue of judgment came about. No one will say it is not the Supreme Court that made the decision. It is the highest court of appeal that ignored, that is the case now, that ignored the repealed courts, the repealed laws of the land, and made a judgment that appeared today to be controversial. So we will look at that and we will come to terms with what is happening.
Not be tried again based on the illegality perpetrated against him by the federal government following the invasion of his home. Also, the court held that although the Nigerian government was reckless and unlawfully rendered Kanu from Kenya, such unlawful act has not divested any court from proceeding with trial. Now, Justice Lowell said no Nigerian law was cited in the suit seeking Kanu's release on the grounds of unlawful abduction from Kenya.
That is another area of controversy. Here, the Court of Appeal, according to the legal counsel, Mr. Njoko, they knew that the law was dead, but they were trying to divert attention of the people. Mr. Njoku described the ruling as not an accident, nor an intellectual slip. But however, he sees it as a deliberate judicial ambush, which we can remember the barrister saying that they were ambushed when they made application and asked for medical report, and the judge, the trial judge, instead of calling an expert to carry out the medical report, he assigned it to Nigerian Medical Council. Then we will continue to see how this case is treated. Again, for the purpose of information, when you appear, this is very, very important. When you appear before a judge of any court and he begins to overrule all applications presented before him by the defendant, two things may be possible. He may be biased or developed animosity against the defendant. The judge is also may be influenced by someone else to act according to the will of those who are influencing him. Maybe in this very case, it is assumed that the executive and their allies were influencing the judge. During this very process, all applications made were indeed refused. At the High Court, the sitting judge indeed overruled every application, some of which that were needed to be challenged at the Court of Appeal were left by the team. They kept adamant and did not go to challenge those rules made by the sitting judge, Mr. Justice Omotosho. Therefore, Mazi Nnamdi, out of frustration, sacked them because some of those lapses which is not yet for the public consumption. Those lapses are not yet for the public consumption. Therefore, he began to read his files himself. During the process of reading, he consulted the Nigerian Constitution to establish the section of legislation for which he is being tried. The Nigerian Constitution is clear and is accessible for clarity of any case. How the legislative amendment affected the charges, he was able to discover them himself. So this discovery brought a chain reaction. In doing so, he discovered he was being bullied because the executive and the justices want him prosecuted. That is the conclusion. He was angry, he was annoyed that the judges of the court cannot interpret the constitutional laws for which defendants are tried. So, having discovered this, it became a problem for the judge. The question is, what does it mean to say a law is repealed? What is a repealed law? A repealed law is a legislative law which the legislative arm of government has changed or amended or dropped or reconsidered its relevance or irrelevant and decided that the law has expired and no longer on use. You know, sometimes the old school boys with authorities can do anything. They can manipulate anything. And this is what is happening in the society. Sometimes people ask, why do judges make mistakes? This may be as a result of the following factors. One, personal biasness. It may be that it's a corrupt judge who must have taken money from somewhere and must do the will of those who gave him money. It may be he may be incompetent as a judge. Looking at the rulings, we can discover what can be said of the trial judge. Misconduct may take place outside the courtrooms. It may be racism when it comes to international level. It may be tribalism at local level. Maybe the executive's influence is so much on the judge that he starts turning the system upside down in order to satisfy the executives. However, what are the duties of justices at the Supreme Court? This included interpreting the Constitution because they are charged to interpret the laws or the legislative laws in the Constitution. Every amendment, they have to know it to ensure that the rule of law is upheld, to uphold individual rights, ensure that the executives do not abuse people's rights, to ensure that errors from the lower court amend effective records and making necessary orders in line with the Supreme Court Act. That is the rules they're supposed to hold at their palms when attending to all these court cases. Please do not fail to subscribe to this channel, like, share, and please subscribe and press the notification icon for you to receive every part of our videos. It is very, very important. Finally, going through this, we say that Mr. Njoku, I go back to where the application started, where the publication from the Sahara Reporters has enumerated some of these things. We have picked those that are very, very essential. like we described earlier about what is repealed law and what is not. Then here, the summary comes here as a repealed law is a legal corpse. This is how the legal team of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu summarized the act for which the Supreme Court judges delivered their judgment. Their judgment was seen as deliberate, and they informed them that the repealed law is a legal corpse and functions no more. So that is, it has no effect, cannot be used. But unfortunately, those who ruled against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu tried to resurrect a dead law in order to put him on trial. Finally, we can always remember that the Court of Appeal had discharged Kanu, which triggered this constitutional shield. Yet the Supreme Court stripped him of this right and sent him back to face same charges. This is absolutely wrong. But however, it is the same Supreme Court that will bail itself. So the case back to Supreme Court is for him or for those judges to bail themselves. They need to bail themselves out of what they have done. It has been discovered. There's nothing you can do about it. All they need to do is to get themselves out of it and make sure that things are normalized. It's better to have the laws in accordance with what goes on within the society. They are regarded as the highest authority when it comes to judiciary. But when they fumble, their credibility becomes challengeable. That is all we have to say. You have to look out and see what will happen within the period, and we see how they are going to treat it. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for all your cooperation. Watch out and ensure that you hit the icon also